I'm Mark Haleprin.
And I'm John Heilemann, and with all due respect to the New York Times, this is a Christie ally, and this is a Kirstie alley.
With all due respect.
Happy National Chocolate Parfait Day, sports fans. In our lineup tonight, indictments, and Morrissey. But first, Chris Christie. His old pal David Wildstein pled guilty today to 2 conspiracy counts in Bridgegate, while his lawyer said once again that evidence exists implicating the governor in the scandal. But U.S. Attorney Paul Fishman, who unsealed indictments against 2 other Christie allies, didn't lay a finger on the big man himself. And at a press conference this afternoon, Fishman said this.
Based on the evidence available to us today, we are not going to bring further charges with relationship to the Bridge case.
Okay, Mark, so after today, this has been a long time coming, but after today, with respect to Christie's 2016 ambitions, is he on now shakier ground or firmer ground?
Today he's on firmer ground. If you take what's in the plea deal and the prosecutor's narrative of what happened, and if you take the fact that the prosecutor said what we just showed, that on these facts, Christie's not going to be indicted, basically. He's on firmer ground. He sticks to his story. It's still hard to believe, for me to believe, that these 3 people were the only 3 people involved.
I totally agree. And you saw Christie's people trumpeting this fact, the point you just made. We are exactly where we were the day that he gave that talk to the lights shut out press conference back more than a year ago when he said, no connection, no connection, no connection. Nothing has changed, no report, all that's true. I still, David Wildstein is a guy with very little credibility, and yet there's something about the fact that he keeps saying over and over again that he has something and that he's willing to say it under the certain circumstances that the Christie people are going to be nervous about and should be nervous about.
And remember, there is still this central tension. One of the people indicted today says that Wildstein's not telling the truth, even though...
He calls him a pathological liar 25 times.
Fishman, who's a very cautious and careful prosecutor, indicted the guy. So there's still some ambiguity here about what's going on. But I think, from a political point of view, Governor Christie can continue to raise money, continue to travel. This is a good day for him. Keep in mind, though, this investigation is not just about Bridgegate anymore. Mr. Sampson, who was at the Port Authority is being looked at as well. So Governor Christie, I don't think, can totally breathe easy, but this is a good day for him politically.
Well, there are, as you say, there's a lot of other things they've now been looking at. The U.S. Attorney made it clear that this has gone beyond the bridge, and they've looked at other things. So that's still out there, a potential shoe to drop. I to use the classic cliche. The thing I don't understand, and I know you don't understand it either, I don't really understand why Fishman said that thing he said. And I go, we've been spending all day trying to figure it out.
And he said it for a reason, and it maybe was he felt an obligation for Christie, public official, to basically say on Bridgegate the governor's telling the truth. That is right now to me the most sensible interpretation, but it's a little weird.
It's a little weird.
More to come on this. All right, from the start to finish this week, the boldest and biggest headlines came out of Baltimore. Today, big development. Maryland's attorney for the city, Marilyn Mosby, announced the indictments of 6 officers involved in the arrest of Freddie Gray, including 1 charge of second-degree murder. Here's how the very impressive Mosby framed these new criminal charges.
To the people of Baltimore and the demonstrators across America, I heard your call for no justice, no peace. Your peace is sincerely needed as I work to deliver justice on behalf of this young man. To the youth of this city, I will seek justice on your behalf. This is a moment. This is your moment. Let's ensure that we have peaceful and productive rallies that will develop structural and systemic changes for generations to come. You're at the forefront of this cause, and as young people, our time is now.
John, in a week where there were some faltering political performances, Mosby was incredible today, making just a huge impact personally and as a leader. My question to you is, are these indictments enough now to calm and settle Baltimore down?
Well, let's stick with her for a second. She is a very impressive young woman, as we saw today, making her debut on the national stage. You could, to use another cliche, A Star is Born. But more importantly, I think, she is giving voice to, for all the people who've been part of the unrest in Baltimore, who've been frustrated, angry, upset. they heard a woman today who spoke for them. And she campaigned on this issue. She said she was going to do this kind of thing and be tough on police. She comes from a police family. She then came out and made good on her word. And they still have, everyone there in Baltimore is still going to say, this isn't enough. We still need to see convictions for us to be satisfied. But this is a start of letting some of the steam out of the balloon.
She did a great job today, not just in her poise and with the indictments, presumption of innocence for the officers always, but the words she chose to deal with the community, incredible. She's got an extraordinary future ahead of us if she can keep up that kind of behavior.
I absolutely
performance.
Agree. If for some reason you missed all the news on Hillary Clinton and her family's foundation this week, allow me to sum it up for you. Politico says, tailspin. Clinton Cash says, India influence. The Boston Globe says, insufficient donor disclosure. The foundation itself says $68 million spent in 2013 to help others. And Hillary says, I had a really good speech on Wednesday. So, Mark, all in all, and in sum, was this week a good week or a bad week in terms of Hillary Clinton's chances of ending up the President of the United States?
In the history of With All Due Respect, this is the hardest question I've ever been asked. Because
it's not.
It is.
It's not. I asked you the square root of 81 once.
She got great coverage for her speech, deservedly so. It was one of the best speeches I've seen her given the context of being a candidate. But I think the bad thing that happened for her this weekend, it was burned in with elites that the Clinton-Cash scandal will go on and on, and legitimately so from the point of view of not just Republicans and not just the media, but a lot of Democrats. So I would say, on balance, a bad week, but you could argue it the other way.
I think on balance, a bad week. I applaud her for her speech. I did on this show. I will continue to say she did an important thing. That was a good speech and was the first time she's spoken of substance. Great. This story in the Boston Globe about the Clinton, the health care initiative, which is the biggest of the philanthropies, that for 4 years did not disclose any foreign donors or any amounts of the donations. I mean, it's the most egregious flaunting of the agreement they made with the Obama administration when she took the job that I've seen. I think that's just really quite ridiculous. And it's also burning in not just with elites. We're seeing poll after poll now that shows that American voters across the spectrum, especially independent voters, see her as untrustworthy. That is a huge problem for her getting elected.
There's a new AP poll today also that suggests people are not excited about her candidacy. And I have to say, to tip it into a bad week, we talked about this yesterday, Bernie Sanders' announcement was strong.
Yeah.
And
he raised a bunch of money in one day.
And people are willing to listen to other voices. In Iowa and New Hampshire in particular, I think those states are still really perilous, particularly Iowa for her, because people want to hear other voices. They don't just want a coronation. And when she's got to engage other voices, she doesn't do that well. I thought on the positive side for her, going after these law enforcement issues. You know, people are going to constantly obsess. Is she repudiating President Obama? Is she repudiating Bill Clinton? The fact is, one of the things that made that speech strong was she believed everything she said. It wasn't poll tested. It was from the heart.
Agree.
Big thing for her if she can keep
and
that up.
And again, I'll say it again. There's no doubt. We clamored for her to do something of substance. She did something of substance, and she did it well. Yep. The performance was great. But I got to say, there's just currently there's no objective metric that's like getting better for her right now. The polling is on the is on a downward trend in a lot of places. And as you said, I do think we know from all the stats that we have, people want competition in this race, and Bernie Sanders could give them enough of it.
You tell me.
All right, James wants us to move on, so let's move on. It's been a wild week in news, obviously, but the coming days could get even wilder, including in the world of presidential politics. Check out our calendar for what's coming up. First, tomorrow in South Carolina, it's going to animate. The Republican Party in South Carolina is going to host a lot of Republicans. Jeb Bush, Ted Cruz, Rick Perry, Lindsey Graham, Rick Santorum, all in Columbia, speaking to activists there. Same day in Louisville, the Kentucky Derby, and out in Vegas, of course, the big prize fight between Mayweather and Pacquiao that's going to get a lot of attention with a lot of money on the line. Sunday's the day to nurse your hangover because the work week starts with two big additional presidential campaign announcements. Carly Fiorina, who's announcing not at an event but on the telephone and by press release and an electronic town hall, and Ben Carson. Then Tuesday, Mike Huckabee joins the race with an announcement in a town called Hope, Arkansas. That's also the day, of course, of Cinco de Mayo. Hillary Clinton's going to Las Vegas as well. And then across the pond, John Cleese and others will be watching, as we will, the UK election on Thursday. John, plenty to watch next week. Which one event will get the bulk of your attention.
If the Kentucky Derby and the prize fight were in the same place and there was a chance that Pacquiao would hit a horse, that would be the thing that I would be looking at most. But the thing I'm actually going to be paying attention to most is Mike Huckabee. And that's because I think of all these things, he's been the missing person. A guy with great political skill, we agree, great communication skill, has made it clear he's going to run for now several months and has been nowhere to be seen. This is the chance for him to either to launch himself towards becoming a player in this race or not. And I want to see what he does.
I agree with you. That's the event I'm watching, too. If you look back to his last campaign in 2008, he didn't emphasize his Arkansas record very much, and then he got hammered on it as being too liberal, the commutations, the sentences, and whether he raised taxes too much. He had a Democratic legislature. Today, his campaign put out a video, which we're going to talk about in a minute, in which he really emphasizes the Arkansas record. And the fact that he's choosing to do the announcement in Arkansas, you know, you saw Rand Paul do an announcement in his home state, Cruz did not. In his home state, I think, have to now make the case. I was a great governor of a state with a record of success. At some point, if Mike Huckabee does what you and I both think he can do, which is to be a first-tier or strong second-tier candidate, he's going to have to make the case on his record, and Tuesday is going to be a big day with his day to do it.
Absolutely right. All right, now to the most important news of the day. Morrissey. Yes, Morrissey. You know, that guy who used to be the lead singer for Johnny Marr's band. He's coming to Madison Square Garden, and the New York Post reports the arena is caving to the vegan singer's demand that no meat be served for his performance. I find this, well, you can tell from my tone of voice how I find it. Mark, my question for you, the principled question, should artists be allowed to dictate what fans are allowed to eat or not eat? These fans, having paid good money for the ticket, can the artist tell them, you can't eat that, you can't eat that?
In the history of With All Due Respect, this is the second hardest question I've ever been asked. My first instinct is to agree with you and to say, of course the fans should be able to eat what they want to eat, and of course the garden shouldn't bend to this. On the other hand,
dude, if you go to this show, you're going to have a brisket in your pocket.
I think it is.
You're going to have sausages, bacon in all your pockets.
I think it's fantastic for the artist to reach out to his fans and say, here's what I believe in. And you know what?
He can say that
if the show
without being a fascist about it.
If the show doesn't
sell out, doesn't have to be a food fascist about it.
If the show doesn't sell out and people don't want to come, he'll have to deal with the implications of that. So on balance, not just because I like to disagree, I think it's kind of awesome.
I think the vegans are screwy.
The personal is the
I would
political.
accept it if it was a place where I was compelled to eat barbecue. Then it would be okay with me. But under these circumstances,
go Morrissey, go.
All right, coming up, I walk into Larry Flynt's office to hear why he is ready for Hillary. We'll be right back. This week in L.A., I sat down with someone you probably didn't expect to make news about the 2016 election, Larry Flynt, the impresario behind the hustler empire, a First Amendment crusader, a self-described smut peddler who cares, and it turns out, a big fan of Hillary Clinton. Larry Flynt, thank you for welcoming us here into your fabulous office in Los Angeles. I know you've got, you wanted us to come out here and see you because you had something on your mind, something you wanted to say, so I want to give you the floor and tell us what we're here for.
I'm endorsing Hillary Clinton for president, but I don't think she needs my endorsement.
Okay. I'm just curious about what is it, you say you've always been a Hillary supporter, what is it about her, why do you confer your endorsement on her, what is it why would she make a great president?
My endorsement is a little bit different than others. I take a look at this Supreme Court and I realize that they've gradually emerged as a new legislative body because Congress won't do their job. They wind up making the rules that everybody else lives by. And we've had a right-leaning court for half a century, and it's time that was changed. If Hillary gets in, chances are she's going to have an opportunity to appoint 2, maybe 3 justices to the court. We could shift the balance of that.
There are a lot of people who regard Hillary Clinton as a feminist icon. You know, she could be the first female president. She has a lot of female supporters, a lot of liberal female supporters, who I imagine when they hear your endorsement of her, they will think, that's a little incongruous, given the way that Mr. Flynt has made his money. So how do you respond to that?
I'm sure that Hillary doesn't necessarily approve of everything I do. So, but if I've got a choice between anything I've seen in the Republican bill or Hillary, I'm going to vote for her.
Right. Do you think of yourself, I mean, this is going to seem like a strange question, but do you think of yourself as a feminist?
Oh, yeah, I think, well, people in Gloria Steinem's world, they think I'm the misogynist of the century, you know.
Right.
But, you know, I can't change their way of thinking. I've never had a model come into my office that said she felt that she was being exploited.
Do you think that that sexism is one of the big barriers, or one of the biggest obstacles that Hillary Clinton will have to overcome to become president of the United States?
No, I don't think it plays at all. Right. It might irritate Rand Paul a little bit. Other than that, I don't think it's going to bother anybody.
You once one of the things that a lot of people look forward to in the potential of Hillary Clinton in the presidency. If you're a Democrat, you look forward to the notion of Bill Clinton being there in the White House. I know you've said in the past that Bill Clinton has told you that you are his hero. Tell that story.
Oh yeah, I outed Bob Livingston during the trial of the Senate after the impeachment of Clinton, and it wasn't looking very good for the president at the time, but that seemed to make everybody stop and think, hey, what are we doing here? Why are we asking for everybody's head on a platter? You know?
Right. But you ran into him someplace in Las Vegas, you said, at some point, and he came up to you and...
Yeah, I was at a fundraiser in Las Vegas, and he come up to me, shook my hand, and he said, you're my hero. And I said, oh, that means a lot coming from you.
You mentioned the Bob Livingston thing, and you've done this in the past with Bob Livingston, and you've tried to do something I'm going to describe now on a variety of Mitt Romney, others, where you've put out ads asking for people to come forward with stories about their sexual scandals, if they have any in their closet. You've hired investigators to do work in this area. I'm curious whether in 2016 you plan to be involved in the campaign that way, looking into the lives of Republicans.
No, and I'll tell you why. 30 years ago, you could take a politician down with just a sexual affair. You can't anymore. The last guy I outed was Vitter, the senator from Louisiana.
David Vitter, right?
David Vitter. He got reelected to the Senate, and he's getting ready to run for governor of New Orleans. So there must be some kind of complicity and corruption or something in order to really be able to bring them down.
Right. Right. I mean, presumably you think that's not the worst thing in the world, right? I mean, there had been for a long time so much primness around the issues of sexual indiscretion, so-called.
No, but the reason why I went after him is there's no hypocrisy around my company, and I don't think that there should be hypocrisy in politics, you know. That's the reason why I wanted to out him. You got a guy who's got 2 mistresses, and he's married, and, you know, you think he's Ward Cleaver. And, you know, he's just not.
Ward Cleaver, the famous father on Leave It to Beaver, I think you're referring to there. Okay. But you did try to do this with Romney in 2012, so...
Not anything on sexual. I was trying to get information on his tax returns.
On his tax returns, that's right.
On his tax returns.
Right. So will you do that kind of thing then? Not on the sexual side, but on the other... Will you put any resources into the notion of trying to investigate any or whoever the Republican nominee is?
Oh, if we get a bona fide lead and we think there's something to it, we'll definitely look into it.
So there's some chance that you could be sort of like you could end up being sort of like a pro-Hillary super PAC.
No.
A one-man hope pro-Hillary super PAC.
Hillary don't need no help from me.
Yeah, we were talking about the Republican field. You think about Rand Paul, Ted Cruz. We talked about Jeb Bush, Scott Walker. Mike Huckabee, you know, that whole range of people. Which of those candidates are there any of those that you would find remotely close to acceptable as a potential president of the United States?
I think if you're a climate denier, that disqualifies you to be president. And Rubio, who seemed to have everything going for him, he's on all the right-wing talking points, you know, and that just troubles me, you know, having somebody like that in the White House. I don't think If Bush shoves enough money into this thing, I think he can get the nomination. But I don't think in his wildest dreams he can beat Hillary. He can never get away from his brother. As much as he would like to, it's not going to happen because there's too many questions to be answered, and there's too many questions that nobody has an answer for, you know. And this is really very unfair to Bush. But, you know, my grandfather used to have a saying that the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree.
Right. And if you were looking, I know I asked you about your past endeavors to snoop around or try to unearth information, do investigative reporting on some of these Republicans. Who, if you think about that field, who strikes you as being the most likely to have skeletons in their closet?
Mike Huckabee.
Mike Huckabee?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. The most adamant ones are the ones that's got the most to hide.
I spent a lot more time with Larry Flynt in his vast and amazing office. And we'll be showing you more of our conversations soon on BloombergPolitics.com. But up next, Governor Huckabee kicks off his campaign in a way that reminds us of a certain show on HBO. Our debut of True Candidate is next.
Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee plans to announce his presidential bid on Tuesday, and today he put out a political preview video. Take a look at this thing. It's pretty standard stuff. Huckabee giving speeches, old footage of him. But then things get a little weird. You see here a shot of the Clintons, some hammering, black and white. Huckabee driving a car. I don't know what that's about. This woman looking off in the distance. It's all a little weird and got us to thinking that the elements in this video might be more appropriate somewhere else. Maybe in a different kind of teaser video.
You wonder ever you're a bad man?
I'll lead with moral clarity in a dangerous world.
There's a difference between right and wrong. There's a difference between good and evil.
I'll keep all the options on the table in order to defeat the evil forces.
This is a world where nothing is solved. There are broader ideas at work.
You ever see something like this?
No, sir.
Power needs to be local and limited.
It's a really good story. I never get tired of telling it.
Any drunken redneck can walk into a bar and start a fight. A leader only starts a fight that he's prepared to finish.
The world needs bad men. We keep the other bad men from the door.
After the break, we'll whet our appetites for that Morrissey concert.
Morrissey fans in Gotham, if you need some meat for the concert at MSG, just drop on by because we got ourselves a surplus here. How does that meat? You know, the Smiths had an album once called Meat is Murder, right? You think meat is murder? You don't even care.
Delicious.
It's delicious. It may be murder, but it's delicious. You got to read.
Double cover on Monday. Live coverage, Carson and Carly. The Arena presidential announcements up next. Taking stock, Radio, Bloomberg Law. Sayonara.
Sayonara.